Welcome back to the study of the book of Revelation. Tonight we're going to be in chapter 13, so go ahead and open your Bibles and turn there now. Just a brief overview. In the last couple of chapters, in chapter 11, we saw that finally the seventh trumpet was sounded. The third terror was released. That was the very interesting chapter with the two witnesses. And then it goes into chapter 12, which seems very different than chapter 11. It stops moving forward with the whole chronological order of the trumpets, and it starts talking about the nation of Israel. And it talks about this figure, the dragon. And we talked about last time that the dragon represents Satan. And it's this beautiful overview of the nation of Israel, its history, how Jesus came and was a Messiah and conquered the dragon, cast the dragon out of heaven. He no longer had a right to accuse God's people. And then the dragon came down to earth and was ticked. And so the dragon is hell-bent on causing as much pain and destruction and rebellion as possible before his time is up. And he knows that he doesn't have much longer. So that's where we ended with chapter 12. Chapter 13 is really a continuation of chapter 12, the end of chapter 12, because we're going to see that the dragon plays a very significant role. But an even more prominent figure plays into chapter 13, and that is the role of the Antichrist. Now, it might surprise you that the word Antichrist is not mentioned in this chapter or in any chapter in Revelation. That's right. Not one time is the word Antichrist used. The only time the word Antichrist is used is in 1st and 2nd John, and it's just mentioned very briefly in just a couple of times. But the reason why the word Antichrist has stuck for this character in chapter 13, even though in chapter 13 he's described as a beast, is it's just the perfect descriptor for this figure. Because this figure in every way, shape, and form is a counterfeit Christ. He is trying to usurp God's authority and God's glory. And as a result, he is what the best possible representation that Satan could come up with being the Messiah. And so because he is the false Messiah, he is the Antichrist. All right, but let's go ahead and dive into this chapter and see what there is to see. Verse 1. Then I saw a beast rising up out of the sea. It had 7 heads and 10 horns, with 10 crowns on its horns. And written on each head were names that blaspheme God. This beast looked like a leopard, but it had the feet of a bear and the mouth of a lion. And the dragon gave the beast his own power and throne and great authority. So now you can see why I really wanted to tackle a couple of chapters in Daniel before we tackled chapter 13. Because some of the things mentioned in these first couple of verses is so clearly a direct connection to Daniel chapter 7 and Daniel chapter 9. And even other chapters in Daniel. This beast with the 7 heads. Again, 7 represents the number of completion. It's a holy number. Of course, Satan would like to usurp and take that as his own. But what it's saying here is there is going to be a final world power that is going to have complete control. 7, crowns, complete control. There are 10 crowns on these 7 heads. And the 10 crowns represent, I believe, that the leaders of this world power. I believe it won't be just one person in control at the very beginning of this world power, but this world power will be a consolidation of power of various nations that will rule the earth. And there will be 10 different rulers at that time. All right. Then it says that each of these heads and names blaspheme God. And so it's going to be very clear that this world power is going to be anti-God. Antichrist in every way, shape, or form. They will persecute people that stand for Christ, but they are given their authority by the dragon. The dragon, again, representing Satan. Satan's giving them authority. He's given the beast the authority. So Satan is the puppet master behind the Antichrist. And it says the beast looked like, and I think this again right now is just talking about the world power. The beast looked like a leopard, but it had the feet of a bear and the mouth of a lion. Now, this harkens again back to Daniel. There was a prophecy, there was a vision in Daniel that was interpreted by Daniel of King Nebuchadnezzar, and there was a lion head that represented the kingdom of the Babylonian Empire. And then the bear was the kingdom of the Medes-Persian Empire, and the leopard represented the Greek Empire. and then this dragon-like creature represented the Roman Empire. And so all these are here, and I think that there's a possibility that these are mentioned as looking, that this is what the beast is looking this way, is because this beast is going to have the remnants of these empires as part of it, which would place this empire major location in Europe, and then also Eastern Europe and part of the Middle East. And so don't know if that's the case for sure. The other possibility is simply saying that this nation, this world power, is so strong, it has all the power combined of those other empires. All right, let's keep reading verse 3 now. I saw that one of the heads of the beast seemed wounded beyond recovery, but the fatal wound was healed. The whole world marveled at this miracle and gave allegiance to the beast. They worshiped the dragon for giving the beast such power, and they also worshiped the beast. Who is as great as the beast, they exclaimed. Who is able to fight against him? Now, if you go back to Daniel, you'll also see that there is a prophecy about the Antichrist, and it says that there'll be 10 heads, but at some point, 3 of the heads, 3 of the horns will be kind of usurped by this one little horn that will kind of take over, and it'll be the main figure blaspheming God and taking charge. And that is a prophecy of the Antichrist. And I think these verses in verses 3 through 4 are an explanation of how the Antichrist gets so much power, potentially. And I think this is how one particular individual comes to the forefront of this world power and gains control of it to such an extent that that one person is identified as the empire in general, which is something that commonly happens, especially with evil empires. You think of Hitler and Mussolini and Stalin and Mao, and these figures, they became their nation. I mean, they were one and the same. You identified them as that. I mean, Hitler is Nazi Germany, all right? Well, I believe that the Antichrist at one point will get wounded in the head, mortally wounded, perhaps shot and killed. But somehow God will allow Satan to have enough power to raise this person back from the dead. This person will come back from the dead, and when people see this miracle broadcast all over the world, they will think that there's no arguing with it. This person clearly is supernatural. This person clearly is someone worthy of praise and worship, because he came back from the dead. He survived a wound that he couldn't possibly survive, and he did so supernaturally. So he must be of God. He must be from God. And this Antichrist, the beast, will turn people's worship and adoration not towards the one true God, but towards the dragon, towards Satan. He will encourage satanic worship. He will also take a lot of the worship himself. All right, verse 5 now. Then the beast was allowed to speak great blasphemies against God, and he was given authority to do whatever he wanted for 42 months. And he spoke terrible words of blasphemy against God, slandering his name and his dwelling, that is, those who dwell in heaven. And the beast was allowed to wage war against God's holy people and to conquer them. And he was given authority to rule over every tribe and people and language and nation. And all the people who belong to this world worship the beast. They are the ones whose names are not written in the book of life before the world was made, the book that belongs to the Lamb who was slaughtered. Anyone with ears to hear should listen and understand. Anyone who is destined for prison will be taken to prison, and anyone destined to die by the sword will die by the sword. This means that God's holy people must endure persecution patiently and remain faithful. All right, so let's catch up with some of our points here. Point number 1, the beast rising out of the sea is likely the same beast mentioned in Daniel 7. It represents the last world power and the ultimate leader of that world power, also known as the Antichrist. Point number 2, Satan wants to be God, but the best he can do is copy and counterfeit what God does. He uses a counterfeit Messiah and counterfeit prophet to perform a counterfeit resurrection and counterfeit miracles. All right. First step in this is create a counterfeit Messiah. And so what he does is he has his beast. The beast is killed and then resurrected. Does that sound familiar? I mean, that's the storyline of Christ. Satan doesn't know how to create an original story. God is the author and creator of all things. He is the one that is truly creative and can create something from nothing. And so, but the beast, that's what he does. And what the dragon does, what Satan does, is he mimics. And so one way he mimics is that he has this leader, this great figurehead who's already a world power leader, get killed, assassinated, resurrected, and so everybody start to praise him and worship him. And then John gives this warning here in this chapter that says when he takes over, he will be hell-bent on bringing as much persecution to God's people as possible. He will blaspheme God, disparage his name, and then at the same time, he will take the worship of all these people, and he will be given the power to rule over all the world. And during this time, it says only the ones that are not written in the book of life, only the ones that are in the book of life will survive this. Well, and it doesn't mean physically, but it means eternally. But it also says that anyone with ears to hear should listen and understand. Anyone who's destined for prison will be taken to prison. Anyone destined to die by the sword will die by the sword. Meaning good people, people that love God, people that pray to God regularly, will be persecuted, will be thrown in prison, and will be killed. And he's just pointing out, it's during this time when the Antichrist, the last 42 months, that's the last 3.5 years, again, 42 months, 3.5 years, that's when it will get really bad for God's people. That's when Satan and the Antichrist won't even pretend to be on God's side, that they will be just actively trying to destroy. It'll be during this time that God's people will just have to wait patiently to the end and endure persecution. God's people, the Jewish people, will be taken and kind of protected in a supernatural way, but it won't be living the good life. It won't be in mansions. It won't be all kinds of prosperity. They will be hidden, probably in caves, hidden away. Believers will have to, meet in secret. They will be persecuted. And so this is what this chapter tells us. But now it's going to tell us how Satan is also going to mimic God and bring in a prophet here, and how he's going to do some miraculous things. So verse 11. Then I saw another beast come up out of the earth. He had 2 horns like those of a lamb, but he spoke with the voice of a dragon. He exercised all the authority of the first beast, and he required all the earth and its people to worship the first beast, whose fatal wound has been healed. He did astounding miracles, even making fire flash down to earth from the sky while everyone was watching. And with all the miracles he was allowed to perform on behalf of the first beast, he deceived all the people who belong to this world. He ordered the people to make a great statue of the first beast, who was fatally wounded and then came back to life. He was then permitted to give life to the statue so that it could speak. Then the statue of the beast commanded that anyone refusing to worship it must die. He required everyone, small and great, rich and poor, free and slave, to be given a mark on the right hand or on the forehead. And no one could buy or sell anything without that mark, which was either the name of the beast or the number representing his name. Wisdom is needed here. Let the one with understanding solve the meaning of the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man. His number is 666. So much going on here. But see what Satan did here. He takes this other figure, which is, most people don't know about the prophet. It's interesting to me how pivotal a role this character plays, and how infrequently he's talked about in religious circles or in, Bible scholarship or anything like that. But this character will have the voice of a lamb, being very, very gentle, very smooth talker. But it says he will also have the voice of the dragon. He will speak the words the dragon wants him to speak. And he will be pointing everyone to worshiping the beast, the Antichrist. All right? And so when I talk about how much Satan loves to counterfeit here, okay, you have a counterfeit Messiah, and you have a counterfeit prophet, you have a counterfeit resurrection, and a counterfeit miracles here. Even the miracles are miracles just like Elisha, and bringing fire from heaven and that kind of stuff. All these different things, counterfeit. But I think the worst one here is Satan creates a counterfeit trinity. You have the dragon, which is is Satan's attempt to be God the Father. And then you have the beast, the Antichrist, who is clearly trying to be God the Son and be the Messiah. And then you have the prophet, pointing everyone to the false Messiah, the Antichrist, which is clearly like the unholy Holy Spirit. And so these three characters play together, create this unholy trinity, and try to convince everyone to come to Christ. And they are very, very convincing. This brings me to point number 3. The Antichrist will be very convincing and lead many astray. And Christian persecution will likely be more rampant than it has ever been. I mean, think how convincing this is. If you saw someone call down fire from heaven, that would be a significant thing. You would wonder if there wasn't some kind of God power inside this person. Coming back from the dead, again, another miraculous sign. And then this statue is given life. So this statue is made in the image of the Antichrist, and then this statue is given the ability to come to life. And I don't think this is just going to be electronics. I don't think this is some big Android or computer thing or AI. I think it'll be given some kind of life supernaturally, even beyond what we think of through technology. But whether I'm wrong about that or not, this statue is also going to point people to worshiping the Antichrist. So all of this is going to be so convincing and put immense pressure on the whole world to worship the dragon, the beast, and the prophet. And everyone is going to be required to do so to such an extent that they will not be able to buy or sell goods or really be part of the economy unless they take on the mark of the beast. And if you're into any kind of end-time prophecy, then you know about the mark of the beast and you know about the number 666. This is just really out there. But before we dive into that, all right, hold that thought, I do want to point out that this statue is clearly the abomination of desecration mentioned in chapter 9 of Daniel. I mean, it's just so obvious that in the last 42 months, there's going to come a time where the Antichrist puts in this statue, this abomination of desecration, in the temple and demand people worship it and worship him. And so this is it unfolding. This is verification that this will happen and how it will happen. And so it is going to be a bleak time for all of true believers, and honestly for the entire world, because while this is going on and the beast is doing his thing and the Antichrist is doing his thing, so will God be doing his thing. And all kinds of supernatural things will be happening in the world. And also he's going to unleash demonic forces to cause pain and inflict pain. And, just basically the 7 trumpets and the bowls of God's wrath that we're going to be studying. All right, so point number 4, the statue mentioned in the chapter is likely the abomination of desolation referenced in Daniel 9. And then point number 5, people will have to accept the mark of the beast to be part of functioning society. All right, so what is it with this mark of the beast? Why has it captured the imagination of so many different people? And what is the deal with number 666? I am so sorry to be so disappointing, but I don't know. I mean, I don't know for sure. There's a lot of theories, obviously. We have the technology now that would make a lot of sense that people have chips inserted into. This is already happening. Obviously, we do it with pets all the time now for just identification. But even people have been willing to have chips inserted in them just to make it easier to pay. I mean, right now we just have to wave a credit card over something and we can pay for something. It's just so quick and easy. Well, think about now you have to carry in a wallet and just being, just scanned by rubbing your wrist over something. That is the direction our technology is taking us. So most people, I think, believe that the chip will be something that it'll be a chip that's inserted that has the mark of the beast some way, shape, or form. Now, the scary part is whether or not this mark of the beast is obviously the mark of the beast. I have to believe that it will be obvious, that anyone taking on this will know they're taking on the mark of the beast. It's really scary to think that you could be, convinced to take on some kind of payment device on your body and it be the mark of the beast and you not know it. I just don't think that's going to be the case. I think it's going to be advertised as if you want to belong to this world power and we're in control here, then you have to take our identification mark on your person in some way, shape, or form. Now, where it comes in, if something else than that, I really don't know. But where this number 666 comes into play, a lot of people have a lot of different theories. I'm not going to go into all of them because they're so out there and across the board. But some of the most common ones is that, the chip or identification mark will literally have 666 on it. And some other people believe that it'll just have a symbol. Another thing is that the Antichrist's name will somehow represent the number 666. This is a really popular theory. So in Greek lettering and Roman lettering, those letters also represent a number, a very specific number. And so some people have taken names like Nero and certain popes in the past and even certain presidents in the past and tried to convince people that they're the Antichrist, because if you take the letters of their name and add them and take their number that represents that letter and add all those numbers together, you get 666. So everyone's trying to figure out which names in the world that could possibly rise to power, could possibly have their name that add up to 666. And some people will only use one of the first or last name. Sometimes they'll use the first and last name. Sometimes they'll use the first, middle, and last name, all try to in an attempt to make it equal up to 666. Again, I don't know. Maybe that will be the case. Maybe when the Antichrist comes to power, it will turn out that his name will equal 666. Another possibility, though, is simply that the number of mankind is 666. We are short of the glory of God. All right, we have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. God's number is 7. The number of perfection, holiness, 777 would be his number. 666 is short of God's glory. It's the number of the dragon. It's the number of Satan and just of mankind and our selfishness and our falling short of the glory of God by making wrong choices. So it could simply be a reference to that. But somehow, some way, shape, or form, the Antichrist will make everyone take a mark. And it will be up to those that are living at that time to refuse that mark and cling to Jesus. Otherwise, they will be involved in the destruction of the end times. And they will not spend eternity with Jesus. But anyone that refuses to take the mark and claims the name of Jesus will be saved. And there will be millions and millions of people that will be saved. All right. So we just have to kind of think about the encouraging things, even during these times where we're talking about really difficult, sobering thoughts about how the Antichrist is going to come to power. But that wraps up chapter 13. Chapter 14, we're going to get back into like the heavenly realm and see some of the bulls as they're unleashed of God's wrath. So read ahead, read chapter 14, and we'll see you next week.